Hey there, welcome to Film in the Blank. My name's Ian, I watch a lot of movies. Here's everything I watched this month. I started the month off with Sinners, written and directed by Ryan Coogler. No film so far this year has sunk its teeth as deep into the cultural zeitgeist as Sinners, and for good reason. Even after an overly revealing trailer and a few worrying release date changes, Sinners cleaned up at the box office and showed how an original, non-IP based film can connect with audiences and electrify genres that have been fading for years. The reality-distorting musical sequence in the middle of the film still gives me chills thinking about it all these weeks later. It's just a phenomenal intersection of a bold vision and the technical genius to make it happen. I honestly could have used another 10 to 15 minutes of meat in that last section to balance out the beefy first half of necessary but bulky setup, and I'm still mulling over that chin-scratching credit scene. But man, what a film, and I can't forget about Ludwig Göransson's jaw-dropping, genre-defying score that is, without a doubt, one of the top 10 scores of the 21st century. 4.5 stars. Up next, my Kurosawa film for the month, 1957's Throne of Blood, written by Akira Kurosawa, Hideo Oguni, Shinobu Hashimoto, and Ryuzo Kikushima, and directed by Akira Kurosawa. Kurosawa's feudal Japan set spin on Shakespeare's Macbeth hits all the story beats of the original play, but it does so with a smoothness and grace that feels fresh. Toshiro Mifune is a fantastic lead, especially in that tragic last third. I didn't get as much personality from this as several of Kurosawa's other films, including Ran, his take on King Lear, and The Bad Sleep Well, his take on Hamlet. The closest Throne of Blood comes to defining itself is through the creepy mysticism and flashes of the horrors we as people are capable of. Isuzu Yamada as Lady Asagi creepily shuffling around emotionless is definitely the stuff of my nightmares. 3.5 stars. Up next, my favorite film from 2021, Red Rocket, written by Sean Baker and Chris Burgosh and directed by Sean Baker. Red Rocket is an opus of an indie film that tells a pointedly American story about self-invention against the backdrop of Trump's initial rise to power. Drawing from films like Shampoo that sets its soapy Hollywood melodrama against the backdrop of Nixon's re-election, Red Rocket ups the ante in drawing even more damning connections between Trump and human barnacle Mikey Saber. Simon Rex plays Mikey with such wide-eyed confidence and commitment to the train wreck that is his outlook on life, particularly giving his all with Mikey's blasts of neurotic dialogue. Mikey's the most lovingly cringy slimeball in cinema, making his journey one you're not sure if you're purely rooting for or against. Sean Baker's unique brand of gloriously grotesque Americana is so engaging and refreshing, and he's got some of the shrewdest directorial skills to back it up. This isn't as easy to love as Anora, but it's still a winner to me. And bonus points for one of the funniest crash zooms in film history. 4.5 stars. Then Wolfman, It's Wolfman, written by Lee Winnell and Corbett Tuck, and directed by Lee Winnell. I missed this in theaters and finally checked it out, but wish I hadn't. It's not messy as much as it is just devoid of good ideas. There's minimal plot, characters you couldn't care less about, and a ham-fisted through line of generational trauma and anger that is a great example of a film aiming for so-called elevated horror and landing instead in hollow nothingness. Again, I say woof. 1.5 stars. Next, one of the last big movies from Cary Grant I'd yet to see, 1939's Only Angels Have Wings, written by Jules Furthman and directed by Howard Hawks. First off, the title is a lie. Birds, bats, maxi pads, I rest my case. Beyond that though, what a fantastic film following a group of freight pilots in a remote South American town who take on dangerous flights in order to make a living. Cary Grant as the company's stoic manager shows some nice dramatic range amidst his sea of genius comedic performances in the 30s and 40s, and it's all beautifully shot with some smooth blending of miniatures, compositing, and daring aerial footage. I also really loved the script. The dialogue was chock full of profound brilliance and buzzy barbs and never let the tone waver. 4.5 stars. Then, here we go, it's 2018's Climax, written and directed by Gaspar Noé. The wildest film of the month for me is Climax by a kilometer, because France. Told over one psychotropic night of feverish nightmares and bursts of visceral trauma, Climax follows a dance troupe spending the night in an abandoned school while they rehearse for an upcoming performance, only to all be unknowingly dosed with LSD. While it's a maddening trip of a film, Gaspar Noé's filmmaking is really great and holds your hand through the journey. Before the merd hits the fan, he sets all the pieces up on the game board brilliantly, blending shots focusing on the individual, then the group's dynamics, then the relationships within the group, before mutating once more to focus on the energy and style of the characters. If you can stomach chaos in all its forms, strap in and give Climax a watch. 4 stars. Next, drink every time someone says cruciform. It's 2023's Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning, written by Christopher McQuarrie and Eric Jenderson, and directed by Christopher McQuarrie. On a rewatch, this ticked down a bit for me, but it's still an extremely polished action thriller in this long-running franchise that benefits from some exciting supporting performances from Haley Atwell, Vanessa Kirby, and Palm Clementieff. I also noticed on this rewatch that it's probably the funniest Mission Impossible film, which feels less in line with the original tone of the franchise, but definitely more enjoyable. 4 stars. Then a film that will have you tearing up over a rice cooker, All We Imagine as Light, written and directed by Payal Kapadia. This had a lot of buzz last year. When I was watching it, my initial reaction was more muted, but after sitting with it for a little bit, it grew on me and then some. Director Payal Kapadia's style of filmmaking here is very measured and elegant, falling somewhere between the styles of Claire Denis and Celine Song. It's a heartbreaking look at isolation and an insightful temperature check on the modern Indian woman, rolled into a film about love and longing. 4.5 stars. Then the dumbest title of the month, 1991's The Linguini Incident, written and directed by Richard Shepard. The plot here is whatever, focusing on an eccentric heist that's not really a heist of an extravagant New York restaurant, but I love the zany dialogue David Bowie and Rosanna Arquette get to throw around, as well as the blatant disregard for all things normal. It's a very easy film to love, no linguini though. 3.5 stars. Then, Oh No, a Nice Blonde Lady's in Trouble, Drop, written by Gillian Jacobs and Chris Roach, and directed by Christopher Landon. Drop doesn't make much sense, at all, but its bubbly tone and zippy direction from Christopher Landon of the top-notch Happy Death Day films let you know the point is the ride, not the destination. I wish there were a few more twists and turns in the story to give a terrific Megan Fahey more fun beats to hit. Still, it's a great post-White Lotus role for her and an alright film. 3.5 stars. Up next, some Primo Live Theater, 2022's Prima Facie, written by Susie Miller and directed by Justin Martin. My fiance saw Jodie Comer perform this show live several years ago and raved about it, and ever since I've been trying to get my hands on the National Theater live taping of the show. And well, I got it! It's one of the best one-actor shows I've ever seen, and without spoiling anything, it follows Tess, an ambitious lawyer whose personal life and legal career are thrown into a tailspin and things spiral out from there. Jodie Comer won a Tony for her work here, and it's easy to see why, from her military-grade breath control and stamina to her expressiveness and the range that she demonstrates. Definitely go in as blind as you can and let a master of her craft take it from there. 4.5 stars. Then I watched 1949's All the King's Men, written and directed by Robert Rossen. The breakneck pace of this is so disorienting, flying through years and years, extreme character arcs, huge plot points, all in under 2 hours. Most of the film is basically frenetic montage, several scenes with only a couple lines of dialogue, a character getting screamed at, and then repeat. For a drama aimed at examining the slow corruption of good people, they really should have found a pared-down way to do that. It's still an interesting story and an alright Best Picture winner, but damn. 3.5 stars. Then for my 100th watch of the year, 2015's Mistress America, written by Noah Baumbach and Greta Gerwig, and directed by Noah Baumbach. Mistress America is equal parts Frances Ha, Little Miss Sunshine, and young adult, and it was designed in a lab to make me love it more and more with each line of dialogue. I think Frances Ha is the better overall film and narrative, but Mistress America wins out in terms of character and dialogue. Maybe that's from Mistress America going for the comedy more directly, or maybe it's from Greta Gerwig's swirling tornado of a character being more of a supporting role, which gives the audience more distance to enjoy her one-woman show. Whatever it is, Noah and Greta know how to pull the best out of each other, and we're all the better for it. 4.5 stars. Then my Bergman film for the month, 1958's The Magician, written and directed by Ingmar Bergman. Of the Bergman films I've seen so far, The Magician has been the one I've struggled to figure out what to do with the most. It's thematically different from most of his other films, its cast is abnormally large, and it traffics in the blurriness between reality and illusion. The parallels between The Magician and Bergman's own life as a filmmaker are really nice, but unless you're looking for that kind of hidden meaning, I could see getting a bit lost in the weeds of what the film is trying to convey. Still, it's not hard to say that Bergman has delivered again, albeit not as memorably. 3.5 stars. Next, another video game adaptation that bunts and waddles to first base, Until Dawn, written by Blair Butler and Gary Dauberman, and directed by David F. Sandberg. As a fan of the video game, I don't really understand why they adapted it in this very loose way that cuts out the characters, the setting, and the basic premise of the game. They went for a watered-down mishmash of Drew Goddard's Cabin in the Woods and Stephen King's 1408 that was heavy on some quality practical effects and light on narrative follow-through. There's literally a part where the characters sit around scrolling through videos they took of scary scenes that ostensibly happened but we're only seeing snippets of. Like the writers just got towards the end of Act 2 and were like, fuck it, let's just do a clip show. Like they needed to pad out a season of a network sitcom. That's a choice. 2.5 stars. Up next, 1984's Falling in Love, written by Michael Christopher and directed by Ulu Grossbard. This is definitely a movie that was made and currently exists. 2 stars. Next, he's at it again, Paddington in Peru, written by Mark Burton, John Foster, and James Lamont, and directed by Dougal Wilson. The first two Paddington movies are so good they should be taught in school, Clockwork Orange style. I like the instinct to change up the scenery to give this third one something new, but in the end it all melted into a somewhat generic family adventure movie. It just doesn't pop like the first two, probably a casualty of losing original director Paul King and matriarch Sally Hawkins. Olivia Colman and Antonio Banderas were nice additions to the brood of Paddington antagonists, but definitely a step down from these two maniacs. 3.5 stars. Then Rouge Your Knees, it's 1933's 42nd Street, written by Ryan James and James Seymour, and directed by Lloyd Bacon. 42nd Street is a film that aims to entertain you by bridging the divide between the decreasingly popular Broadway musical extravaganzas of the late 20s and the increasingly popular screwball comedies of the 30s. Save for that last act, it settles into being neither a musical nor a screwball, but something a bit more muddled. As is often the case for me with these type of show-stopping musical films, once the curtain goes up in the last 20 minutes, it's clear everything before it was just rearranging of the pieces so this number could materialize. Some cool bits of production design and effects, but not a ton more. 3 stars. Up next, 1984's The Killing Fields, written by Bruce Robinson and directed by Roland Jaffe. Not sure why I thought this film about the Cambodian Civil War and ensuing genocide would be something good to have on while doing some work. I hardly got any done, plus I accidentally typed the word gun into a spreadsheet. The film itself can be hard to watch at times, but the 80s prestige filter this film is coated in defangs a good amount of the on-screen horrors. I thought Hang S. Noor earned his supporting actor Oscar, especially for being a professional actor whose wife and child died under the actual Khmer Rouge. Just a really nice confluence of art and history there. 3.5 stars. Then I watched The Wedding Banquet, written by Andrew Ahn and James Schamus, and directed by Andrew Ahn. This is probably the biggest disappointment of the month for me. Not to say this is awful, but it's a film that feels overly stiff for its emotional storyline and one where you can see all the unfinished seams that keep you from really connecting with it. I haven't seen the Ang Lee original, so I can't speak to any changes the filmmakers made to update this remake, but very little actually worked for me. It was pretty uninteresting visually, the script had no idea how to build meaningful stakes, and a lot of the acting bumped for me. In particular, Bowen Yang, who I normally love, but was punching way above his ability in this more dramatic role. 2 stars. Next, some Michelle Pfeiffer with 1991's Frankie and Johnny, written by Terrence McNally and directed by Gary Marshall. This is an alright dramedy love story that doesn't have much identity to get your arms around. Michelle Pfeiffer is terrific as half of the titular pair. Truly, no one makes acting look as effortless as she does. But it feels disjointed, mainly between Michelle and her supposedly schlubby outsider character. Hearing Kathy Bates originated the role on stage and lost out on the film role in favor of someone more conventionally attractive like Michelle is disappointing, as great as Michelle is. I would have really liked to see Kathy's take on this character. Things might have felt less disjointed as a result. 2.5 stars. Up next, 1956's emotionally chaotic Bigger Than Life, written by Cyril Hume and Richard Maybaum, and directed by Nicholas Ray. Bigger Than Life follows family man Ed Avery, played by James Mason, who becomes dangerously addicted to a steroid prescribed to treat chronic pain and blackouts. I didn't find much to connect with in the first half. That's mainly the calm before the roid rage storm, and Ed's transition to wildly unhinged in the middle felt jerky and oddly cruel. The true Jack Torrance-like descent into madness in the last act was where things finally picked up and the stakes felt earned, but overall I'd put it right around 3 stars. Then some Lubitsch with 1938's Bluebeard's Eighth Wife, written by Billy Wilder and Charles Brackett, and directed by Ernst Lubitsch. The first half hour of this was just the sharp-tongued romp I was hoping for, then the film suddenly veers hard left and becomes strangely mechanical and not a lot of fun. I guess we'll always have that first half hour. 2.5 stars. Then, a title I can really get behind, The Amateur, written by Ken Nolan and Gary Spinelli, and directed by James Hawes. If my mom hadn't pushed to go see this, I probably would have skipped it. The trailer and marketing didn't wow me, and it seemed like a very generic spy thriller, and turns out it is a very generic spy thriller that can't get out from under its formulaic checklist of a plot, so it just clings to it and prays. It also features a character played by John Bernthal that I would bet my firstborn child was a character added in reshoots to give the film another flimsy layer. He has one scene in the very beginning where he only interacts with Rami Malek, then has absolutely nothing to do with the plot of the film, then pops up right near the end, again to interact only with Rami Malek, where they just chat about what the next scene is gonna be, and then disappears. Nailed it. 2.5 stars. Next, 1947's scintillatingly titled The Egg and I, written by Chester Erskine and Fred F. Finkelhoff, and directed by Chester Erskine. My years-long quest to watch every film nominated for a major Oscar has led me down some strange paths, but rarely a path as strange and somehow boring as this film about city folks trying to make it on their new farm. In fact, I was so bored watching this I can't even be bothered to cram an egg pun in here. It would have been something like I'm so over this, but no, too bored, forget it. 2 stars. And I finished the month with 2001's Ali, written by Michael Mann, Eric Roth, Stephen J. Revell, and Christopher Wilkinson, and directed by Michael Mann. This ebbed and flowed in terms of quality, some parts surprised in how engrossing they were, but I was equally surprised by how many parts dragged as well. I'm very glad we, as a nation, have moved past these bloated biopics in the 2020s. 3 stars. Let me know in the comments, what are your thoughts on these movies, any others I should check out, what's the worst thing you've ever typed into a spreadsheet. Also stay tuned for other great commentary videos, reviews, video essays, and more. You can check me out on Letterboxd at CinemaDome24 or on TikTok at Film in the Blank. I appreciate you liking and subscribing. See you next time.